Welcome to Sensitive and Self-Assured. You have found a space made for you, and here's how I know you belong. You feel everything, and somewhere along the way, you started believing that was a problem. My name is Alyssa, and I'm a highly sensitive woman who stopped trying to fix herself and started learning to trust herself instead. This podcast is for the woman who is exhausted from managing herself just to get through life. The one who edits herself before she speaks, who loses herself in relationships, spirals after decisions, and still quietly wonders if something is simply wrong with her. Nothing is wrong with you. You just haven't learned how to work with your sensitivity and trust yourself yet. Your sensitivity isn't a problem to fix, and self-assurance isn't out of reach. They belong together, and here is where the two meet. Let's get to it. So last week, I talked about the discomfort of speaking up for what you want and what you need. And that in and of itself is kind of a hard thing. And this week, I want to continue that conversation around doing hard things and what happens when we do. And I don't mean the things that we force ourselves to do or, maybe we have been doing that for years or possibly even decades because we think we should. I'm talking about the things that are a natural part of life that are just hard and we maybe haven't learned how to do them, like asking for what we want and need. And I'm also talking about the things that we really want to do, but for whatever reason, we have told ourselves that we can't. And so for that, they feel really hard. And hard things are genuinely hard. Not hard, but you just need to push through. Like, they're actually hard. And it's not a weakness to avoid doing the hard things. It actually makes a lot of sense why we avoid it, because they're hard and it's uncomfortable to do them. And there is something that is lost when we keep trying to route around them. And it is in learning how to do the hard thing while taking really good care of yourself that you build self-assurance. And it's not the confidence that everything will go well, but it is the trust in yourself that regardless of the outcome, that you will be able to handle it. So if you have been listening to this podcast from the very beginning, back when it was called The Highly Sensitive Woman, and by the way, I am just so excited about this new title, Sensitive and Self-Assured, because I really feel like it truly captures what we are doing here. And we are learning how to work with our sensitivity and having self-assurance, and it's not an either or, it's a both. And that is just super exciting for me. So I'm so glad that you are here now. But if you have been listening from the very beginning, when I first launched this podcast almost a year and a half ago, you know that it is dedicated to my grandmother who passed away at the age of 47. And if you have listened to my birthday episode from last December when I talked about what it has been like for me to turn 47, then you know that I finally started working toward accomplishing a goal that has been a goal for nearly 30 years of my life. And that goal is something that I have carried with me. I was not actively chasing it for all of those years. I've been carrying kind of the weight of it. And there is a very big difference between carrying something that's kind of an underlying thing that you want versus pursuing it, and it's just taking a while for you to achieve it. So to kind of catch you up, if you are new, I have wanted to complete the Indy Mini. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it is a half marathon in Indiana, and it's in May every year, and it is in kind of partnership with the excitement that is the month of May in Indianapolis around the Indianapolis 500. And it It's a half marathon, 13.1. Actually, it's 13.3, but who's counting at that point, right? Anyhow, it's a half marathon that you actually do a loop on the track. And anyway, this, I can talk about it for days. It was just such a cool experience. But this goal has been a goal of mine since I was a freshman in college. That's when the dream originally started. And when I was in college, I had finals pretty regularly on that Saturday in May, and I could never plan around it. So I wasn't able to do it when I was in college. And then immediately after college, I moved to Georgia, and it was not feasible with a teaching schedule to come to Indiana in May. And I just sort of dismissed it as being something that I would accomplish just because that's the turn that my life took. And I did complete a couple half marathons while I was living in Georgia, and those felt like a really big sense of accomplishment, and it felt great. And honestly, for a while, it felt pretty complete. But then I moved back to Indiana, and once I did the Indy Mini and the desire to do it, it almost immediately bubbled back up. And I decided to sign up. And then I didn't do it, and I decided to try again, and I didn't do it, and then I signed up again. And I honestly, I kind of lost track of how many times. I think 4 times I signed up to do it since moving back to Indiana and didn't complete it. And it wasn't necessarily a life got busy. There were some factors that were outside of my control. COVID was one of those, that the race didn't happen that year, understandably, because, you get 50,000 people together in a group during COVID, right? And there was another time where I was battling some physical limitations that I allowed myself to kind of give into, and I'll speak a little bit more to that as I talk about this year. And there was just, honestly, there became this kind of low grade shame and disappointment in myself, even though I was excuse me, I truly was letting myself off the hook. And when I got really honest, I was giving into some excuses. And so there was just this kind of low grade shame and disappointment in myself for not following through with this goal. And to the point that it got so painful, I unsubscribed from the email list because I didn't want to get the updates for the next year's race. And that ended up becoming problematic. When I signed up this year, I wasn't getting the emails because even though I had signed up again, I didn't automatically get added back to the email list. And so I had to reach out and get that corrected. But maybe you can relate to something that you've always wanted to do and just have never pursued it. And your brain has given you a lot of reasons why, and they seem legit on, surface level, they seem legit, but maybe when that feels like, when you get like really honest with yourself that, yeah, I'm kind of letting myself off the hook here, and what that feels like and how that kind of shapes how you view yourself. And I want to be really clear that there is a very big difference between legitimately having reasons why you aren't doing something, or, you're not forcing yourself to do something that is not in alignment with who you are, and following through with something that feels like a really big goal or is a hard thing to do. I want to make sure that you understand I'm not asking or suggesting is a better word. I'm not suggesting that we force ourselves to do things that aren't right for us. And sometimes we tell ourselves that it's not right for us as a protective mechanism, when really it is other things that are contributing to us not following through. And I never want anyone to hear like push through no matter what. That is absolutely not what I believe. And I don't want any of us, because we have done it for so long, to do something that misaligns with your values or your body or your capacity at a given moment. That is not brave. That is actually self-abandonment. And it is presenting itself, or like wearing a costume of strength. And we have been doing that for far too long. And I want all of us to move away from that, and also stop letting ourselves off the hook for something that is simply hard or uncomfortable. Because when we do that, that is when we shrink, and that shrinking then becomes a pattern, and your capacity for what you can handle or manage quietly contracts and it shrinks, and we don't even notice that it is happening. But it was happening for me, and I know that it has happened for you in various times in your life. And so in this particular moment, the thing that I had to sit with is really asking myself, am I being honest about my physical limitations? At 47, can I really train and do a half marathon? Or am I just coming up with excuses? So let me talk about some of those physical limitations, because they were real. If you've been listening over the spring, you know that I ended up getting sick, and I lost 3 or 4 weeks of training during that time, which is, it ended up not being the end of the world for sure. And it's a pretty significant amount of time, especially if you are not a regular runner. Like I was really counting on those weeks to be able to gradually increase my mileage. As a result of that setback, what I am proud of is that I didn't even allow my brain this time to entertain that I wouldn't be able to do the race because of that setback. But what came next was the need to increase my mileage faster than I had originally planned. And I was doing it. Absolutely was. And then I started to have some real physical limitations, some things that were on the verge of becoming an injury. And thankfully, I recognized that in my body, and I cut back, but I didn't stop. And I still, this time, I was so dedicated to achieving this goal that I did not allow myself to entertain the idea of not finishing it. Even when my mileage had to cut back, I was like, I guess I'll probably walk more than run. And also, let me just say, when I originally signed up for this almost a year ago, I thought I would have to walk the whole thing. So the fact that at this point in my training in the spring, a month or two before the race, I was running a good bit was kind of icing on the cake. And I was so impressed with what my body was doing. Again, if I had listened to all of those things previously that my body wasn't capable of, I might not have run it. And that ended up being a super cool thing, because I secretly had a goal to finish under 3 hours. Again, that was an icing on the cake thing. And because I was able to push myself, I did come in just under 3 hours. But the training itself was not glamorous at all. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm doing this and I'm committed to this goal, and I'm ready for it to be over, because I'm ready to get back to my normal workout routine, and where walking and jogging are part of it, but not the sole focus. And I did it. I finally accomplished this goal. At the time of this recording, it was exactly 1 week ago today. And the day encompassed more than just the race. There was, an entire day, and from start to finish, that day is probably one of the top 5 days of my entire life. And I'm getting a little bit emotional just talking about it, because it was so incredible and better than I could have ever imagined. And what is so awesome about it is I have these memories and I have this experience, and I have evidence that I didn't have before, evidence that I can show up for myself, I can do hard things, and that my self-assurance isn't something that is built on things going smoothly, but it is built on knowing that I can handle them even when they don't go smoothly. In the weeks leading up to the race, a friend of mine said to me, "You know, you can drive that distance faster, right?" And I mean, she wasn't wrong, but that's kind of the point of my episode today. It's, sometimes, a lot of times, there is a quote unquote easier route. And that's exactly why the hard things go undone or unsaid, because we feel like we have this easier route, but the easier route doesn't give you the thing that you want, right? Like if I had not pushed through and I had taken the easier route, I wouldn't have completed the Indy Mini. But the other thing that doing the easier thing doesn't give you, that doing the hard thing does, is evidence. Because when you do the thing or say the thing, you build a case file, and it is proof in your own lived experience, not somebody else, not, well, if she could do that, maybe I could. No, it's, I did this thing. And so I have my own lived experience, my own evidence that you are capable of more than you might believe that you are capable of, and that you can tolerate the discomfort, that you can show up for yourself. And that self-assurance, it compounds over time. And I also want to just have a whole lot of compassion for when we don't do the hard thing, and that when we try to avoid it or go around it, it is not a failure. It truly is a self-protection mechanism, and it quietly keeps you from building that file and trusting yourself next time. So our goal is to just start building some evidence one piece at a time. So I want to tell a story recently about one of my clients. She went to the dentist, and while I personally am okay with going to the dentist, there are also some things about it that get to me. I know that for many, that is a huge deal. And it is legitimately an awful experience for many, many people. And so I want to honor that. And this client specifically, it is not a pleasant experience for her. And even for me, even though I'm not afraid of the dentist, or it's not this, awful experience, there's still a lot going on, right? You've got the smell of the place, you've got the radio is on, and every individual station has its own TV show going, and you've got the conversations of all of the people, and then you have all of the sounds of the drill and the suction and the scraping and all of the equipment that is taking place. And then you're in this very helpless position, lying on your back with someone's hands in your mouth. Like, there's a complete loss of control. And it is not a super fun experience. And I say that with so much love for my friends who are dentists and dental hygienists. We love you very much for taking care of our teeth, and kudos to you for being able to work in that very sensory stimulating environment. I could not do it. But for those who going to the dentist is a legitimately awful experience, there's a lot of anticipatory dread that starts the day before. And that is the case for my client. And so we work through, sometimes how to manage that even before you get to the chair. And I want to celebrate her because she had a recent experience of going to the dentist, and she did it. And it was hard, and she got through it. And that is, I really want to celebrate it. And it also then led us to a conversation where we were able to explore during our session what this proved to her. And we kind of made a list of what this proved to her. Not just that I can go to the dentist, but this piece of evidence and doing this thing that was really challenging for her. How can we transfer that to other things? And if she can do that, what else is she capable of doing that maybe she's been telling herself that she wasn't? And that is what it looks like to have evidence showing up in real time and starting to shift the relationship with yourself, that you can start trusting your own capacity and genuinely feel self-assured in it. So today I want to encourage you to start building your evidence file. It is a growing, very conscious collection of the hard things that you have already done to prove your own capability. And as you're listening, I know your brain might immediately go to, I haven't done anything yet. And I want to say, stop it to your brain in the most loving, kind way. Stop it, because you do have so much evidence that your brain is just automatically discounting, and it is not keeping this file. But you have gone through many hard things and you have survived them. You are not starting from zero. And I want you to really think back. What are some hard things that you have already done? If going to the dentist is awful for you and you have gone twice a year for however long, those are hard things. Maybe there's some other medical things that you have been through and you have survived it. That is evidence. Maybe you've had some difficult conversations, or you have been through grief, or you did the thing that you were terrified to do. All of it counts. Every single thing counts, even if it did not go perfectly. And maybe you have some tangible evidence. Like for me, I have the tangible evidence that I completed this race because I have a medal and a t-shirt and a photo that shows that I did it. And maybe you don't have the tangible evidence and you need to create something, even if it is writing a list on a sticky note and you stick it on your wall or your mirror so that you have it to go back and look at for now. And then after you've kind of gathered up and you've started thinking about all of this evidence from your life up to this point, great. And from here on out, every hard thing that you do, it gets added to your evidence file. And so what I want you to do is to start noticing and to start keeping that file, because the evidence has been there all along. Your brain has just automatically been discounting it and instead focusing on what it perceives to be all of these shortcomings. And so we are going to shift it and we are going to force it to start finding all of the evidence of the hard things that you have done so that you can start letting yourself see it and start building some confidence and start looking at, I did this hard thing 7 years ago that I completely forgot that I did. How can I transfer that into this hard thing that is facing me next month? And proving to yourself, if I could do this, I can most definitely do that. So yes, my friend was right. I absolutely could have driven 13 miles faster than I jogged it. And if I had done that, I wouldn't know what I know now about what I am capable of doing. And I wouldn't have that evidence in my file. And doing the hard things isn't about proving yourself to anyone else. It truly is about building a relationship with yourself that you can actually trust, one piece of evidence at a time. That is what self-assurance really is. And if this topic, if this episode really resonated with you, if you are sitting with your own version of a nearly 30-year goal or a dentist appointment that you've been avoiding, or a hard thing that you keep finding reasons not to do, I would love to work with you. One-on-one coaching is where we dig into your evidence file and we figure it out together. We figure out how to do the hard things that are worth doing, and we build the kind of self-assurance that actually holds. So you can click the link in the show notes to schedule a consultation, and I would love to meet you right there. And I just want to leave you with, you were never meant to abandon yourself to get through life. You were meant to live it, sensitive and self-assured. Until next time, take care.